Okay, so we've learnt about homeostasis, and now we're going to learn a little bit more about how it works through the process called negative feedback. And this is how the endocrine system controls most processes in our body. So the main learning intention is that homeostasis is maintained using negative feedback. You'll need to be able to explain how homeostasis works and negative feedback. And then we'll look at two examples which you'll need to know, which is adrenaline and blood sugar levels, blood glucose. So firstly, homeostasis is maintained using this idea of negative feedback. So if we look at this graph here, you don't need to memorize it or write it down, but it's the whole idea that we have for every measurement in our body, like temperature, blood sugar levels, water levels in our blood, there's this level that we want to keep things stable at, which is this line in the middle. And we call that ideal measurement the set point. So if we're thinking of body temperature, if our body temperature gets too high, above the set point, then the endocrine system is going to need to respond to that and bring our body temperature back down again, back close to the set point. And then if our body temperature gets too low, or any other value gets too low, then the endocrine system needs to bring that back up again, back to the set point, so our body is stable and all our organs and cells can function properly. So the idea of reducing the stimulus to bring it back to normal again, that's what negative feedback is. The process of reducing a stimulus to return back to the set point. So as we mentioned, if the stimulus is too high, then negative feedback reduces it. If the stimulus is too low, then negative feedback increases it. So negative feedback does the opposite of the stimulus. So let's look at two examples of how negative feedback works. It can work in one direction, like adrenaline, or it can work in two directions. So let's look at adrenaline first. So adrenaline is a really useful stress hormone. It helps us to avoid stressful situations and to escape them. So here's a classic example. If you're out in the wild and you see a huge predator or a big dangerous animal, or a human that's dangerous, you're going to have the fight, flight, or freeze response. So this person here, their response has been to run away, which is flight, but adrenaline can also cause you to fight, to stay and fight, or to freeze and stay where you are. So adrenaline causes those three things, and it's evolved to hopefully try and save you and help you avoid or survive whatever dangerous situation you're in. So a frightening or a dangerous stimulus is what causes adrenaline to be released, and adrenaline is a hormone. And it gets released from the adrenal glands, which we'll look at in a second. And then adrenaline causes a whole lot of responses. So this diagram is a summary of what happens. Let's follow it along using the stimulus response model, which is always helpful. So the stimulus is seeing something dangerous. Then the receptors are going to be in our eyes, seeing it. So danger is the stimulus, receptor are the light receptors in our eyes. And then the control center is the brain, and they can see here it's the hypothalamus. And then that sends some messages through the nerves, through the spinal cord to the adrenal glands. So all of this is essentially the control center. And then it releases our hormone into the bloodstream. So here's adrenaline going into the bloodstream. And then the hormone travels to the effectors, which are all the organs that cause the response. So for adrenaline, there's a whole lot of different effectors, because the point of adrenaline is to get your body ready to fight, ready to run away, or to freeze if that's the last option. So you can see Adrenaline goes to the heart and it increases your heart rate to pump more blood. It travels to your liver to release more sugar into your blood so you have more energy. It travels to your digestive system to reduce that because you don't need to digest if you're in danger. It increases your blood pressure in your blood vessels, and it dilates the bronchioles. It makes your lungs bigger so you can get more oxygen in and your breathing increases as well. So we all should know that feeling when you're really frightened and you feel that rush through your chest and suddenly you have more energy and your heart starts pumping. That's adrenaline, and you can it actually, the response happens quite quickly within a few seconds. And this is all the different effectors doing their job. So the best way to show negative feedback is to use these little flow charts here. And it's basically a circle version of the stimulus response model. And it's helping us to see what's the stimulus and how is it being reduced again. So this is a one cycle example with adrenaline, and let's follow along and work out what's happening. So homeostasis, what we're aiming for at normal is to not be in danger. So we can call that the set point as well. You don't want to have danger in your everyday life. So the next thing we have is the stimulus. The stimulus was seeing something dangerous. Then the control center is the brain, and then it sends the message to release hormones to the adrenal glands. And then the actual important hormone that's involved in this one is adrenaline itself. So we'll put the hormone at the top here so it's clear that's what's sending the signal. We didn't mention the receptors, so we'll add these to the side here. Light receptors in our eyes. And then the adrenaline goes to those effectors, which are those whole range of organs that we talked about. So we had the heart, we have the blood vessels, which pump more blood. We have the liver, which releases more sugar into our blood. And we have the lungs, which dilate and start to breathe more quickly. And once all of that happens, we finally have our response. And for adrenaline, we're going to stay and fight and hopefully kill or fight off the danger. We're going to run away, which is flight. And then hopefully we've run away from the danger, or we'll freeze and hope the danger will ignore us. So out of all those responses, ideally, we're reducing that stimulus back to having no danger again, back to our set point. So that's how we use these negative feedback diagrams to show what's going on. Okay, the next example is how we keep our blood glucose levels stable. And this relates to diabetes, which we've talked about quite a lot already. So blood sugar, blood glucose, which is just a type of sugar, the most important one, it has to be kept constant to stop our cells and our organs from malfunctioning. Once you go and eat some food, your body digests the food, and that means your blood sugar increases. And the key hormone to reduce your blood sugar is insulin. So insulin reduces blood sugar and it causes the sugar to go into your cells. If you don't eat for a while and you're fasting, then your blood sugar is decreasing And the hormone that gets released then to increase it is called glucagon. And glucagon causes glucose to be released from the liver to increase the level again. So if we look at a negative feedback diagram for blood glucose, it works in both directions. Because blood glucose can be too high or it can be too low, and we always need to maintain it at that set point. So let's fill out the diagram. So we want our set point to be normal glucose levels. One stimulus that might happen is we might have too much blood glucose in our blood. So let's say we've eaten a really sugary meal with plenty of sugar in it. So there's the blood glucose level is too high. So the key organ involved in detecting it, in detecting our blood glucose, the receptors are actually in the pancreas. The control center is actually in the pancreas too. So the pancreas is a key gland in the endocrine system, we should remember, and it's basically the organ that's involved in this whole process. Then the pancreas realizes, okay, we need to reduce that blood glucose level. So the key hormone to reduce blood glucose is insulin. And then insulin travels mainly to the liver, which is the effector. And the liver's job is to take up and absorb lots of that glucose, so there's not too much in the blood. And that's the final response. Absorb glucose to reduce the levels. So then the final result is we've reduced our blood glucose and we're back to normal again. Okay, so that's if it's too high. If it's too low, then everything happens in the opposite direction. So the stimulus is blood glucose is too low. So if you haven't eaten for hours and hours and hours and you're feeling like you have low energy, this is what's going to happen. Again, it's the pancreas that has the receptor cells in there. Pancreas cells. The control center is in the pancreas too. It releases the other hormone which we need to increase our blood glucose levels, which is glucagon. And then glucagon travels to the liver again. So the liver is our effector. And instead of absorbing glucose, the liver needs to release lots of glucose so we have the right amount back in our bloodstream. So the liver is the effector, and the response is to release glucose so we're back to normal levels again. All right, so those are the two examples of negative feedback, which you'll need to know. So double check you know all the learning intentions, and that's the end of the section.